I've no doubt that this is one of those videos that some people are just going to jump into it and attack me without considering some of the things I say. Or maybe, they will consider the things I say and still disagree, which is absolutely the right. I just know from experience that more often than not, my critics have clearly not listened to the whole video. Um, I want to talk about the Unite the Kingdom rally today in London. Yesterday, I should say. I should keep saying that like the last video. I'm now talking the early hours of the 15th, so it was on Sunday. This was organised largely by Tommy Robinson and others. And ostensibly it was a pro free speech rally and also, surprise, surprise, against migrants. Of course, they'll put the disclaimer against illegal migrants, but I want to just point out a few things. I want to put a few disclaimers. And what I'm talking about in this video, I am very well aware that there will be people at that rally who were there for honest reasons and legitimate concerns. Okay, so I think that branding every single demonstrator far right would be lazy and inaccurate. But personally, if I was involved in a demonstration, if I wanted to get involved in a demonstration, my first question would be who's organising it? What is their agenda? And for me, the presence of Robinson certainly, and definitely Elon Musk, would raise questions. I wouldn't want to be associated with it. I mean, let me give an example. I am very sympathetic to the Palestinians right now, and I'm very critical of some of the things Israel is doing. I think it's repugnant, some of the things Israel is doing. I think Israel deserves all the condemnation it's getting. And I think it was highly inappropriate that the Israeli president visited Britain recently. That was a big mistake by the government to allow him to come here in the current context. Because the government's kind of sending out mixed messages. On one hand, they're strongly criticising Israeli actions. On the other hand, they're keeping up kind of diplomatic normalcy. Normality, I should say. So, they have to make their mind up. Are we supporting Israel or not? Anyway, back to the events in London. One of the organisers, was a video circulating, claimed that there was 2 to 3 million people. Now that's clearly nonsense. It was nothing like that. It was clearly a very large demonstration, but there's no need for hyperbole. 2 or 3 million. 3 million is more than the entire population of Greater Manchester or the West Midlands conurbation. It's about a third of the entire population of Greater London. At 1 March, that's just absolute nonsense. But that actually is relevant because the true figure is probably more like 110,000. I think that's what the police estimated. That's still sizable. It's still nothing to dismiss. It's been called the biggest nationalist demonstration in years, possibly decades. So it's no small thing. Nevertheless, it should be put in context. Greater London's about 9.2 million people, and the United Kingdom is about 69 million people. So 110,000 is a big rally for sure, but it doesn't represent all of us. I also have a theory that when we look at news networks, when you see this avalanche of right-wing comments, I wonder how representative that really is. I mean, why is it Reform only has 4 MPs? If they're so popular, why do they only have 4, whatever it is, 5 or 6 MPs? Can't recall the exact figure, but it's, it's certainly, you could count it on one hand. So, I wonder, is there a bit of exaggeration in just how much support they have? My theory is that the populist right and those who follow them are very, very vocal. So, they're very, very active in putting out their message on social media and in comments, perhaps more than their critics. I'm not sure that it's actually representative of the true situation. I hope it's not, because I am seeing a dangerous trajectory. I made a point to someone I used to know earlier. I fell out with a guy because he's really jumped on quite a hard right bandwagon, but he was making the point that not all demonstrators are far right. Well, I agree with that. Of course they're not. But I made the point to him that when you have a rampaging mob, they're not going to differentiate between good migrants and bad migrants. I think there's an enormous amount of dishonesty coming from the right these days. For instance, the claims that there's no far right involvement is a disingenuous nonsense. There will be a lot of people involved in that who do have legitimate concerns about free speech and about how, for example, hate crime laws are being used, that sort of thing. And I do share those concerns, but as much as I mentioned the Palestinian thing, the reason I don't go on pro-Palestinian marches is I don't like some of the elements in it. The likes of Bob Villan or some of the idiots who do praise Hamas and Hezbollah and so on. I don't want any association with those people. I stand by my conviction. I'm very, very critical of what Israel's doing, and I will speak out against it. But I don't think you could join a rally and then complain because people point out that it's organised by extremists. Tommy Robinson, St. Tommy, the guy is a convicted criminal. As far as I'm concerned, he's little more than a glorified football hooligan who has been savvy and smart enough to jump on a bandwagon. And it's all this narrative about protect our children and protect women and girls. The right never have anything to say about British men who abuse women and girls. I mean, a high proportion of those arrested last year for violence also had records in domestic violence. Look at one of the most prominent figures right now, I would argue, in the populist right, and he's also in sports, Conor McGregor in Ireland. Because you see these little hashtags and you see like the UK flag, the Australian flag, the Irish flag. McGregor wants to run for president of Ireland. And the irony of this is he's railing against migrants and the invasion and the threats to Irish citizens. This is a guy who is a rapist, who's a thug with a violent criminal record, who in my view should be in prison. That's the sort of people the populist right are holding up to represent them. Now, to be fair, I think the chances of him becoming president of Ireland are nil, but he still has a sizable following. Probably not the majority, but sizable. Likewise, in the UK, Tommy Robinson, he can do no wrong in the eyes of his followers. I made a video a while back talking about the restaurant that refused to serve him, the waitering staff refused to serve him and his party. I do think they made a bit of a mistake by letting him in the first place. A lot of pubs refuse entry to people because of various reasons. I think they should have just refused entry in the first place. But anyway, the angle I was taking with that, despite the fact I was actually criticising the restaurant's approach to it, I had Tommy Robinson fans immediately pouncing on me, telling me I was an idiot. Of course, these cards, hiding behind their screens, had no content of their own. And it gets into this thing about disinformation. I think both left and right are subject to it, but I think it's more a domain of the right, in all honesty. I think the devil, when we see conspiracy theories, when we see some of the stuff that is just so detached from reality being presented as railing against the mainstream, it does tend to come more from the right than the left. So that demonstration in London may well have had legitimate concerns, but for me, the question is, look at the people who are behind it. Look at Elon Musk sticking his nose into it. Musk actually came in and was talking about fighting or dying. He should stay the hell out of British sociopolitics. Elon Musk is a toxic influence, in my opinion. This is a man who revels in chaos. This is a man who's a proven liar. Last year, he falsely claimed that the government was deporting rioters to the Falklands. And he deleted it later on when it got exposed as a falsehood. What I find really, really galling is supporters of Elon Musk, if he messes up, they say, oh, well, he made a mistake, he apologised, fine. Oh, he's only one of the most powerful people in the world. When he spreads disinformation, when he tells a lie, it does have an impact, just like Donald Trump. As far as I'm concerned, I'm going to say it bluntly, I think Elon Musk is a piece of shit. I really have contempt for him, because this is one of the most powerful people in the world, and instead of using his power for good purposes, he's using it to effectively incite violence, to stoke things up, to rile people up, to vilify migrants, um, to spread conspiracy theories, to spread distortion, and he's not the one picking up the pieces. I understand that one of the problems today was the police underestimated how many people there would be, so they didn't. There was apparently the controversial kettling technique, but what I also saw clearly was some real thuggish behaviour. Yobs getting in the face of police officers, attacking them violently. So anyone who's claiming that that was an entirely peaceful rally is lying. It may be that a lot of people weren't involved in violence, probably the majority. I mean, there was 24 arrests out of 110,000 people, so that, yeah, the majority weren't involved in violence, but it's clear that there was a hardcore element that were. And I suppose you could argue at any large rally there's going to be some trouble. But time and time and time again, we see these so-called peaceful right-wing demonstrations. It was the same with the hotel protests. Again, the narrative was it's all peaceful. That was a lie. It wasn't all peaceful. There was mass thugs attacking the police, engaging in vandalism. So there's a real false narrative coming from the right, and I think it needs to be confronted. There was a counter demonstration, but it was much smaller, about 5,000 people. I also have concerns about the free speech situation in this country, and I've said before I think Starmer's too complacent about that. But I don't think he's wrong to call out the far right. I don't think he's wrong to say that there is no justification in inciting violence. Sometimes perhaps his words are clumsy. You know, when he talks about the far right, it gives the impression he's talking about everyone. But I had to quantify this on GB News recently. He said he was talking explicitly about politicians. But you know, GB News is a network that I would not trust. Why? Because it has a clear populist right agenda. Of course, they'll occasionally have a token left winger. But make no mistake, GB News is absolutely the Fox News of this country. And I think there should be questions asked about reforms links to GB News. At the moment, I can't definitively say that there's some corruption, that they're, you know, interlinked directly. But Nigel Farage has appeared on slots on GB News. He's a party leader and he's a constituency MP. On that point, he seems to spend more time doing media tours and going to the United States to grovel to Trump than he does actually representing the people of Clacton. Even the Prime Minister has to be a constituency MP. So, you know, I don't think the people of Clacton are being served by Nigel Farage. Maybe they think they are. That's up to them. But he seems to spend a lot of his time grovelling to Donald Trump. And I think it's contemptible that a British politician goes to another country to run down this country, which is what Farage done. You know, he went to the United States to basically trash the UK and say how awful and dystopian and tyrannical it's become. He doesn't have a damn thing to say about what his friend Donald Trump has been doing. And then you get the likes of Steve Bannon, like I say, claiming that we're on the verge of civil war. Musk has also said that in light of the riots last year. These people are flamethrowers. I think Elon Musk is totally contemptible. He should stay the hell out of British politics. And you know, right-wingers will say free speech, he's allowed an opinion. Yeah, he's allowed an opinion, but he doesn't have a right to stir up things in another country, to incite violence the way he's doing. And yes, I do think it's inciting violence to spread distortion and to engage in that sort of hyperbole. He also done it in Germany, you know, where he was telling the German people they should vote for the AfD. It's up to the German people who they vote for. It's up to the British people who they vote for. Musk is a South African national who has stuck his nose and interfered in American politics. Frankly, he should just stay the hell out. He should get on one of his damn spaceships and F off to another planet. I am sick of Elon Musk. I'm really sick of him. He used to be, he was always a kind of arrogant rich guy, but at least he was relatively moderate in his politics once upon a time. In recent years, he has taken great glee in promoting the far right. He's taken great glee in promoting dangerous, violent forces, promoting conspiracy theories, and I actually think Musk is a pretty dangerous individual because of the power that he has. And I just think it is so pathetic that people who are struggling in the UK, whether it be from the cost of living or because they are concerned about issues like crime, that they genuinely think Elon Musk has their best interests at heart. Of course he'll tap into the right things, the popular things about free speech and all the rest of it. But you could be damn sure that Elon Musk is utterly self-serving. I don't think this is someone who really has benevolent intentions. I do not trust him at all. I mean, put it this way, if he were to have a base in the UK, if he were to operate personally in the UK, do you really think he would contribute to this country and pay tax? I'm sure he'd pay a lot, but he'd also find loopholes around it. I just think it is bizarre that people think a man that has been speculated to be the world's first trillionaire has their best interests at heart. And yet the same people will vilify migrants. So they will see some Afghan or Syrian as their enemy, but they think that the world's richest man, who's laughing at the chaos that's going on, Musk doesn't give a damn, that they will think that he has their interests at heart. So in conclusion, yes, I'm aware that not everyone involved in the demonstration was far right or violent, but there were clearly some pretty unsavoury characters there. Look at the vile Katie Hopkins, for example. She's a horrible person. Some of the stuff that she's come out with, she's branded migrants cockroaches. She's absolutely a far right mouthpiece. Robinson himself has a criminal record. These are the sort of people that are being held up as leaders. And yes, there were other more responsible people there. I'm aware of that. But I personally wouldn't associate myself with a rally that was organised by extremists. Robinson has a track record of spreading disinformation himself when he vilified the 15-year-old Syrian boy that led to a violent attack on that boy. That was completely shameless. Robinson's very good at coming in and sweeping up anger, And we look at one of the worst crimes this country's seen in recent years, the grooming gangs, which is awful. There were people a lot more responsible than Tommy Robinson speaking out about that a long time ago, but they weren't going about it in the way that Robinson does. The man's a flamethrower, and on a much bigger scale, so was Elon Musk. I'm kind of concerned about what's happening in this country. I'm concerned that the level of disinformation and yes, far-right involvement, you cannot tell me, no one with a straight face can say that the demonstrations we've been seeing outside hotels or at this Unite the Kingdom rally had absolutely no influence whatsoever from the likes of Patriotic Alternative or Homeland or any of those groups. And like I say, that doesn't mean everyone involved was far right. So I'm saying that crystal clear. Not everyone involved was far right. Read my lips. Not everyone involved was far right. Because I know some of you sheep are going to come on and say, oh, you're vilifying everyone as far right. No, I'm not actually. I've said clearly I don't think that's the case. But I do think some naive people are being used by them. And I don't understand why, people, I get why someone will be angry with a migrant committing crime in this country. That is showing disrespect to the country that's giving them refuge. But what about domestic criminals? What about the epidemic of shop theft that we're seeing in this country? What about young offenders terrorising the public? I'll be quite honest, in my city, I have more concern about young offenders who in this city are predominantly white than I do about migrants. But I'm not naive. I know there's some migrants who do engage in crime and are working here illegally, etc., etc. It needs to be controlled. But there's another point with a lot of these problems were happening on the Tories' watch. Yet a lot of the anger seems to be personally aimed at Keir Starmer. I wonder why. Because there's partisan forces who are deliberately stirring up disinformation. All this talk about we demand a general election now. I don't want to see a general election. I don't want to see the 7th Prime Minister in less than 10 years. I don't see how that would help the country. And as much as I am critical of some of the things Starmer has done, I probably won't be voting Labour at the next general election. Who are they replaced with? Reform? Trump's lackey? No thanks. So, people do have a right to peacefully demonstrate, but do not tell me that that was entirely peaceful. If you're going to dress yourself up in an England flag or a UK flag and yell at the police and act like a football hooligan, don't say that you're a reasonable person. Because that's the image that they're portraying. And then they claim they're not against migrants, but they are not against all migrants, but they're instilling fear in people. There was a Sikh woman in the Midlands. I think it was in Birmingham, but don't quote me on that. It was somewhere in the Midlands. She was raped, and it was also a racist assault. The 2 white men, the 2 white suspects also hurled racial abuse at her. Now, how many of these patriots who claim to care about the welfare of women and girls are going to condemn that? How many of these so-called patriots who claim to care about women and girls condemn domestic violence? Some thug beating up his girlfriend when his football team loses. It seems to me they only care about crime when it's a migrant who's accused of it. And they want to blame all the problems in this country on migrants. So, in conclusion, the demonstration was big but doesn't represent everyone. Not everyone at the demonstration was far right, of course they weren't. There were legitimate concerns there, but I do think there were nefarious forces at work, especially Elon Musk. I think that the overall narrative on immigration and migration in this country is overwhelmingly negative. I'd like to say a bit more positive, because it isn't all bad. And I would suggest that the right engage in disinformation more than the left, although both are guilty. The left also does it, but the sheer disinformation that's out there, I feel disgusted when someone like Elon Musk deliberately spreads it around, and then his supporters say, oh well, he made a mistake. It doesn't matter if a few windows are smashed. It doesn't matter if a few lives are threatened. He made a mistake. That's our Elon. Like, you talk about him like he's a personal friend. Elon Musk doesn't give a damn about you people. I suspect he's doing this just to shore up public support to get more access to the UK market, perhaps. I don't know. I don't really know the reason why he's doing it, but I do know that I do not trust him. I do know his track record. So, any trolls that come here, I don't give a damn what you have to call me. I don't care. Because there has to be counter opinions to this. I'm not some sort of extreme leftist who believes in an open door immigration policy where everyone should be let in. That's never been my position. But I do have a problem with the sort of false narratives that the right are coming out with. When thugs were rioting in Ballymena and threatening to burn people alive, including women and children, they actually came on to the comment section on MSN and said, it's peaceful protest. That's the sort of detachment from reality that they're coming out with. Or they were claiming that it's a mainstream false narrative. I am sick and tired of the populist right and the distortion in this country. There is one area I suppose I can be accused of being populist right on. I am hardline on crime. And I am hardline on the need to do something about that. But even there, I feel we need to be careful in terms of how it's approached. I never advocate violence, but I do think there needs to be much more accountability from the judiciary. And I think soft judges enrage people. I think soft judges have a lot to answer for. Someone's calling me, so I'll wrap this up.